Welcome to Rebuilding LA After the Fires. I'm Jan Bresky, and in this podcast, I explore how Los Angeles recovers from the recent devastating wildfires. In each episode, I sit down with developers, community leaders, and other real estate professionals to uncover what it really takes to rebuild homes and neighborhoods. If you're looking to understand what's next for LA, you're in the right place. Let's get started. Today, our guest is Sue Kohl, the president of Pacific Palisades Community Council. Sue, welcome, and thank you so much for being on the podcast.
Oh, thanks very much, Jan. Appreciate it.
So, to start with, I wanted to ask you about your own personal background and also how you became involved in the Pacific Palisades Community Council. And also, what is that community council? What's it all about?
Okay. I won't go too far back, but I've lived in the Palisades for about 32 years. And before that, in other areas of the west side of LA. And I was born and raised in LA, so I haven't really, traveled that far. I raised 5 kids who went to school in the Palisades. And I've worked as a realtor for about 31 years, all over the west side, mostly in the Palisades. So I've been very involved both with, schools, churches, work for many, many years. And with the community council, when I was really busy with kids, I didn't know much about it. But as I started leaving, I started learning that we did have this community council. And the main mission of the community council is really to be a voice for Pacific Palisades, a voice gathering info from the residents, a voice providing information for the residents, and most importantly, a voice in which we communicate to civic and government leaders, our LA City Council, the mayor, the governor. We are really the body who communicates with them. We have meetings twice a month on Thursday nights, only once a month in the summer and December. And at these meetings, we normally have at least one guest, if not 2. They might be someone from the government, like our state senator, our council person. We're having a special meeting this week with a group that is planning to rebuild what was the old Gladstones and bring the information to the community. So in other words, we try and gather all the information, present it to the community, provide a time for questions and answers, and then whatever our community wants us to advocate for, we write the letters, we send them to the government agencies, we call them. Many of us go to city council meetings to try and fight for what we need. And that's what the community council does.
Terrific. And if I recall, a while back, LA instituted neighborhood councils. And I think you mentioned that Pacific Palisades chose not to adopt a neighborhood council, but instead to form a community council. Is that right?
That's correct. We were one of the first people to form any council. And the neighborhood councils do get funding from the city, which is great. We do not get funding from the city. The only funding we get is from donations. But we are also less restricted in what we're able to do and say than those neighborhood councils. So we prefer to keep it sort of independent.
Sure. And so what are some of the topics that are of greatest interest at your meetings these days? I know I read about Gladstone's rebuilding. It made the news in some way recently, but that sounds like that was a topic. What are people saying about the rebuilding process in general, and what are you hearing from your members?
Well, obviously, since January 7th, our entire focus has changed so dramatically, because prior to that, we did a lot of work with LAPD. We had, teenagers causing a lot of trouble at the rec center and in town on Friday nights. We had, certain building issues. We had all the sort of things that would normally, come up. We were instrumental in just making decisions about the Potrero Canyon Park, George Wolfberg Park, all sorts of things. On January 7th, that changed dramatically because all of a sudden we had a town that was, for all intents and purposes, burned down. Our center of town burned, our churches, schools, businesses burned. There were a few neighborhoods in the Palisades where homes remain. Obviously, they have needed and need complete remediation. The neighborhood where I live is called the Alphabet Streets because the streets are sort of lined up and they start with ABC. And the interesting thing about my neighborhood is because it was down in the flat area in the middle of the village, the fires we've had historically have always started up in the hills. The fire department has, dealt with them, and we have evacuated before, but we've always evacuated with the knowledge that, well, they're going to put the fire out in the hills and we'll be fine, but we have to get out for a couple days. Consequently, I, like the vast majority of residents, evacuated, taking nothing, literally nothing, other than the family pets. So it's been completely devastating for the vast majority of residents in Pacific Palisades. So the issues that we deal with now are issues that residents are having with their ability and desire to move back, to build back. And there's so many issues with that, starting with, insurance companies. Some people had been canceled by their insurance companies. A lot of people were very much underinsured. And so there are a lot of people in the Palisades, a lot, who have been there for 50 and 60 years. And this is where they were going to live for the rest of their lives. And now that was all wiped out, and they don't have the funds to rebuild. They might not have enough years left in their life to rebuild. So it's really been a horrible life change for a lot of people. For those of us who are attempting to rebuild, we have the challenges of the insurance companies fighting us about, our dwelling coverage, what we think we need to get and should be getting, and what they think we should be getting. So that's an ongoing struggle all these months for many of us, including myself. In terms of the actual town, infrastructure process, you can imagine streetlights are all burned out. Everything's, burned down. And a lot of parts of town had, for instance, DWP poles. And now we very much want to have our power undergrounded. Okay.
Yes.
So, a lot of people say, we have to have undergrounding, and I believe we have to have undergrounding, but it's not only is it extraordinarily expensive, it's also very complicated because it has to be done in connection with other utilities, other dry utilities, communication utilities. It's not it's not a simple thing like, oh yeah, now we're going to put everything underground. We'll do that. So we're having a lot of meetings about undergrounding with the mayor's office, with AECom, and on the community council, I actually put together a special committee of builders and people with technical knowledge to communicate with the DWP to see how we can get this done.
Let me ask you a technical question. So, are there utilities in the Alphabet Streets right now of any type, or are there sections that still have no utilities?
Well, there are temporary power poles for people who are building. I don't think there's much in the way of utilities other than that.
Okay, so
Gas lines have to be reconnected. Sewer lines have to be reconnected.
people, because I was there recently and I noticed quite, a number of buildings going up in the Alphabet Streets, which was encouraging. But those, I'm guessing when they're building new houses, they're not going to have gas lines for the new houses, or will they? will the gas lines be sort of hooked up later? Is that kind of what people are dealing with?
Well,
If you know,
well, yes, the gas lines for people who are retaining gas appliances, excuse me, the gas lines will have to be hooked up later. You know, for the past few years, the LADBS, the rules and regulations of the city have been you have to be all electric. But after the fire, Mayor Bass made an emergency order saying that people who were burned out and who are building back, if you had gas before, we're not going to restrict you and say you can't have your gas back. Now you can certainly go to all electric, which they prefer, or you can have a little bit of both. And actually, I'm doing predominantly electric, but I like my gas range, you know, so I'm having a little bit of gas brought in.
right.
And in terms of my hooking up with my DWP, my contractor is putting in lines so that I will be connected to a pole while it's necessary, and then later on, when the undergrounding comes, I'll be able to I'll already have a line in place to connect with that. And that's what you have to do when you're rebuilding now.
Got it. Thanks for explaining that. And the what about rebuilding? And I want to also take advantage of your knowledge as a realtor in a minute here too. But what are you seeing in terms of patterns? Would you say most people are going to rebuild, or would you say most people will end up selling, if you had to guess, of the people that lost their homes?
Of the people who lost their homes, of course, every neighborhood is different, but I'd say in general, this is purely guessing because honestly, it's impossible to know. I'd say probably at least 60% are going to be building back. After the fire, you know, there were a few hundred lots that came on the market. The lots have actually been selling pretty well, especially in areas like the Alphabet Streets and the Via Bluffs, areas that are walkable to town. You know, ever since it's always been an advantage to be able to walk into town. And those of us who live in the flats, who don't have the ocean views, have had the advantage of walking everywhere always. And especially after Rick Caruso came in and built his new development in the village, it's been a huge boon. People just want to be where they can walk. So those lots have sold very, very well. In terms of exactly how many people building back and how many lots are being sold to families or developers, it's hard to know exactly. I think at the beginning they were being sold to owner users who now saw an opportunity because of the price drop, because there was a significant price drop. I've always wanted to live in the Palisades. Now's my opportunity to get in there and buy a lot. I can hold on to it. If I can't afford to build right now, or I can build now. So there were a lot of those sales, but honestly, there've been a lot of sales also to developers. I would guess probably about at least 50% of the lots that have sold have been purchased by developers. The prices, you know, they sort of plunged from pre-fire to after fire, of course. But those prices, I believe at this point, have leveled out and have started to come back a little bit, which is good news.
Do you have a sense of what lots are selling for in the Alphabet Streets today, for a sort of a typical lot there, or
I
not
do.
so much?
I do. There's two standard size lots in the Alphabet Streets. I'm not counting the ones on the corners or just a few here and there that are different, but the two size lots are 6,500 or 5,200, depending on what block you live on. The 5,200 square foot lots now are close to $1,600,000, and the 6,500 square foot lots have been anywhere from $1,800,000 up to $2 million.
And how does that compare to when they bottomed out, were they maybe 100 or 200 below that, and now they've rebounded a little bit?
Yeah.
Is that
Like the
accurate?
6,500 lots were probably closer to uh, 1,600,000 to 1,700,000 before.
Yeah. Okay.
And of course, before the fire, those 6,500 square foot lots were 3.1 to 3.2.
So there truly is a once in a lifetime opportunity
There is.
to get into that neighborhood at a
Yes.
lower price, at least $1 million less than it would have been.
Yeah.
Okay. And how about the city? How is the city doing in terms of supporting the rebuild, in terms of performing in all the ways that they need to? Has it been smooth, or does it seem like even with all the attempts to streamline everything, there's an excessive amount of bureaucracy involved?
Well, we live in a very large city, so no one can expect to have no bureaucracy involved. I will say Mayor Bass has made every attempt possible to make our road to recovery and rebuilding faster and simpler. She's had emergency orders. For instance, if you are a fire victim, not if you're a developer building a whole new house, but if you're a fire victim building back and you're building within 110% of your original footprint, you are allowed to do things like have your old gas line back. Your permits are expedited. And all that has come true and is definitely happening. You're always going to hear two or three people here or there who are having problems, but I can tell you from my own experience, it was pretty smooth and the expediting really did work. The one issue we're dealing with now.
Is it possible that the city parked a specific Sue Kohl expediter on the process because of your role?
Not at all. Not at all. They have no clue because actually it was my contractor who did the whole thing.
I have a feeling they knew whose house they were working on, though.
I have a terrific builder and he took care of all of this for me.
That's great.
Camelot Constructions, anyway, the problem we're dealing with now, which is significant, is that another emergency order that the mayor made was that all of our permit fees would be waived. And everyone was all excited. That sounded great. And I know that my permit fees were waived. However, I had to sign a waiver saying that if the city council does not approve the permit fee waivers, that I will then have to come back and pay. And it's tens of thousands of dollars for permits, all different kinds of permits, building, grading, you name it. And so now the fight that we're in, the battle that we're waging is we're trying to communicate very strongly with all of our city council members to basically have a heart and try and put themselves in our position because the city has financial difficulties, as everyone knows. But we don't feel that we should all be bearing the brunt of them making a lot of money from our misfortune. That's how it seems from our side.
So are you saying now that Karen Bass represented that she was going to get them waived, but now the city council has not yet voted to approve that?
No, she never misrepresented anything. She made the emergency order, but she made it clear that,
it was temporary until the city council.
Temporary until the city council approves. Because, in the city of Los Angeles, the city council has to really approve everything. So, so we are trying to appeal right now to the budget committee. There was already a budget committee meeting in City Hall 2 weeks ago, and to the full city council to take all this into account, to try and sort of put themselves in our shoes and to, in fact, let this permit waiver be permanent. So
it's interesting to me. That shines a light on one of the recurring issues I'm seeing about LA's governability or sort of lack of strong executive functions that are built into the system. It's not about any particular person, but city council has all the power, right? And there are situations like this where you'd like to have a mayor that has the power to make a decision and have it stand. Have you ever, has that come to your attention in any way? I mean, I'm just going to say it, as a resident of LA for 30 years, it feels like city's almost ungovernable at the moment, and there's a lot of places where it feels like the city and the residents like us have almost given up. Like when you see certain things happening, there's a lot of people who just tune it out at this point, because you go under an underpass and it's lined with tents, and we've kind of given up trying to fix their problems in a way. I don't know. I know you're in a pseudo elected official position,
Oh,
and I don't want to press you on anything
we're just
uncomfortable.
volunteers. We're purely just volunteers.
What do you okay, well, what do you think about, what has this whole experience shown you about LA, either positive or negative, and specifically the governability and sort of the structure of how we're governed, and also the leadership that we have? And you said some positive things about Karen Bass, which I heard, but I'd like to hear your thoughts on what the wider question.
Well, we're very, very fortunate in the Palisades and other parts of the West Side. Council District 11, we have Councilwoman Tracy Park working for us. And I will tell you that she and her entire staff, both at her West Side office and her downtown office, have been working for us 24/7. I mean, some of them, I don't even know how they sleep. So she's not only worked for us after the fire, but before the fire, when you're talking about situations like in the underpasses, homeless situations, she and her staff work very actively on that, and she has been able to actually make our area a safer area. Other city council members, they have to deal with those issues in their own districts. And I think sometimes, in their politics come into play in terms of how they deal with those issues. And that's where there's sort of a lack of cohesion with the government, because one city council member might want to do this and another one might want to do this, and they can do their separate things in their separate areas to some degree. So it is hard in a city like this to feel like you have a very substantial structure, and you know what that structure is, and you know how the city will respond to issues. We really don't have that.
Right.
It's complicated, it's so complicated, and I can't pretend to understand how it all works. I've just seen from our perspective how it works, and your representatives have to work together. Councilwoman Park has to work with Mayor Bass. Councilwoman Park and Mayor Bass have to work with the other council members to try and sway them one way or the other. And I will say that when we've had a few big issues since the fire where we needed help from Sacramento, both Councilwoman Park and Mayor Bass have been quick to act and speak on our behalf with the governor's office, which has helped a lot.
For example, I know the Palisades was exempted from SB9 4 units on a lot and things like that, kind of density bonuses. And I'm assuming that's something that the community felt strongly about for the entire Palisades.
The community feels very strongly about density. And, some people have the wrong idea. Some people think, oh, they don't want any low-income housing. It's not about low-income housing. When you talk about that SB9, okay? These were developers. They weren't building low-income housing. They were trying to come into R1 zoned lots and build a place where 3 or 4 families could be living. Not low income, just money for the developers. We do have a couple areas of low income housing, and they're fine, and they're back. They've reopened. Everything's good. But what we object to very strongly is increased density, because anyone who saw the news the day of the fire saw what was happening with our evacuation. The Palisades has I could say two main streets. We have Pacific Coast Highway down at the beach, and we have Sunset Boulevard. Other than that, it's narrow streets, windy streets up into the hills, streets where a fire engine, even in the alphabets, which is flat and straight streets, they're so narrow. Some days, without a fire truck can't even get through.
Yeah.
So the idea of bringing increased density anywhere in the Palisades is so important to all of us, because people were left abandoning their cars, running down roads, trying to get to the ocean with fire on both sides of them. Evacuation was next to impossible for a lot of people, and
Yeah.
it's
And
very
if you have more families in the same area, it would be even worse. I get that.
worse.
Um,
Parking, cars, the whole thing.
Sue, we're coming up on about 25 minutes, which is just have a few more minutes for
Okay.
this interview, and I really appreciate you taking the time to explain this
course.
from your perspective. Is there anything else that that you think you'd like to share? And the audience for this is anybody involved in rebuilding, both professionals, real estate professionals, also some homeowners, also developers who are building houses to be sold to new families that want to move in. Are there any thoughts or messages that you want to share that we haven't covered yet?
Well, I mean, not really. Everybody who's building back knew the Palisades as sort of an idyllic place. There were neighborhoods where all the neighbors knew each other. Everywhere you went in town, you knew people. And architecturally, there were so many different architectural styles and types of homes. I think no matter whether it's a developer or an owner user building back, I think our hope is that it doesn't end up. The one thing we don't want to see is like a developer buying 35 lots and just building a housing development, because that's not the way it was before. We want to retain a little bit of charm, and a little bit of, independence of style wherever we can. And that's our hope. And I think from what I can see so far, it's sort of going that way. I think it's going really, really well. So I'm happy with the progress. I'm excited. My house is like half built. So
Wow, that's incredible.
yeah, I just have to decide when I can move back, because I don't want to be living all by myself in a neighborhood with no lights and, no neighbors. But the time will come. And I think it's, some people projected many, many years. And I think it's happening happily much quicker than a lot of people thought.
Interesting. Yeah, I also had that impression when I was out there several weeks ago, and I suddenly saw a lot of homes being built in the alphabet streets.
Yeah.
And you can start to visualize that it's a community again once those houses are finished, once there are people living in them. So with that being said, we all want Palisades and Altadena to rebuild and be vibrant again. And we want our city to be vibrant again. And I really appreciate your time sharing with the audience your own thoughts and your experience.
I'm happy to. Thank you for asking me.
It's a pleasure. Thank you, Sue.
Okay, thank you, Jan. Bye-bye.
Thanks for listening to Rebuilding LA After the Fires. If you found this episode helpful, please share it with a friend or neighbor who might benefit. Be sure to check the show notes for links and resources I mentioned today. And join me next time for more important insights into LA's rebuilding efforts.